Okay, welcome to the HUD Equal Access Rule Training. So HUD established a non-discrimination policy for sexual orientation and gender identity. This is called the Equal Access to Housing and HUD Programs, regardless of sexual orientation or gender identity. And basically the high levels of this, which is what we're going to hit in this training. So I'll just hit the high levels and then point you to a couple of resources, and then we can talk over any questions or comments that you have. But the main thing is that for any agency that receives COC or ESG funding, those agencies must grant equal access to facilities, benefits, accommodations, and services to people that are presenting for any of those things in accordance with their gender identity and their sexual orientation as they identify it. And in a way, so those all of those things must be provided in a manner that affords equal access to folks, right? So why, right? So the first resource that I want to point you to is called the Equal Access for Transgender People. And I'll put a link to this in the meeting notes for this meeting, and also we'll include it with the recording link if folks are watching this recorded. So let me share my screen now that shows that resource. Okay, I've got it kind of big up here, but this is what it looks like: the Equal Access for Transgender People. And this is I think it's like, let's see, it's 23 pages long booklet, but very handy dandy with lots of resources. But at the very beginning, they go into a lot of the statistics that to me just make a very compelling argument for why we need this, right? So among homeless youth, which is usually an estimate that's ranges widely between 400,000 and 2.8 million folks per year. Of those homeless youth, 40% are LGBTQ. So that is a very large percentage. So if we're not treating those folks equally, that's really not serving homeless youth in a way that is acceptable. Also, they note that folks that are transgender are particularly impacted by violence, but that also in seeking shelter, many folks who are transgender also experience violence. 1 in 5 report being denied an apartment or home based on gender expression. So that's 20%, very high. And nearly 30% of homeless transgender individuals report being turned away from a shelter due to their transgender status. 22% report experiencing sexual assault perpetrated by staff or other shelter residents. So this is like super serious and super high consequence stuff. So going through this, let me make this a little smaller so we can scan it a little easier. This document goes through sort of the whys, and then has a lot of great resources, including suggested language for written materials in your agency, what to include in an anti-discrimination policy, and also how to request technical assistance from HUD, which they offer for free for programs if that's helpful for you. So I'm not going to go through every page of this, but wanted to point you towards it. There's lots of great sort of definitions and different things as well that can be helpful. I'm going to add this to our staff onboarding packet. I was really glad to find this resource with all of these great resources. So that's the first resource I wanted to point you to. The second resource is a webinar on the equal access rule, and I'll include the link. This is a link on YouTube. This is a 90-minute webinar that goes through a lot of the details of the equal access rule. So if that's something you haven't watched, I would recommend it. I don't know that it's appropriate I mean, not that it's inappropriate, but I don't know that it's the best use of frontline staff because it's a little like policy wonky level. But for managers and supervisors, I think it's definitely a great thing to have watched and to have that information. So that is also available. And then the last resource is, let me show you where this is. I'll make this a little bit bigger so you can read it. This is something that I've never seen HUD provide, and I was really thrilled to see it. So these are different training scenarios that you can use with project staff that go into different, well, I'm going to pull it up. Make this a little bigger. Let's here. So there are, I believe, 7 different training scenarios. So they lay out sort of a role play with different characters and different people coming in, for example, requesting different, requesting accommodations as they identify with different things around, identification requested and that kind of thing, or identification being required or not required. And each scenario has a dialogue and then has different discussion points and questions to consider. Yeah, and there's 7 different scenarios. This first one has sort of all of the scenarios, and then they have them broken out with each scenario sort of separately. So I thought that that could be helpful if that's not something that you had found before. That's not something I had found before. And it's something that we'll be talking about with our staff and incorporating into our ongoing in-service trainings. I also, related to this also is the family non-separation policy. So again, for all COC and ESG funded programs, it's not legal to separate families when they're presenting. And families are defined by the people that are in the family. So, I think we've all are familiar with sort of the traditional definition of family, and also probably familiar how that's really expanded for all of us ongoing, definitely since my youth at least. But regardless of the gender of folks, regardless of the number of people, if there's more than one human present, that's a family. And however those folks are, whether it's adults or kids or youth or whatever, that is the family. So it's, and folks, what we used to do is sort of take people and separate, put a woman here and kids over here and whatnot. And so what is, that's not legal to be the only option for families. So families have to be recognized as families and served as such. Questions or comments on any of that?
Yeah, I have a question. I mean, how is that currently working in practice here in Orange County?
Jessica, do you want to talk about in Homestart?
I mean, we have trans people at Community House and Homestart, and I guess in practice, the way it works is we just accept them for what pronouns they want us to use, what names they want to use, and we haven't had any issues with it. We talk to the residents beforehand. We make sure we put them in compatible spaces. We tell them to come to us if they have any questions, concerns, or being bullied. And it just, we have to keep reminding staff to be respectful of pronouns and to just, adjust. And so I think it's been working well. We haven't had any problems.
I would say from the system level, we have a wait list for shelter in Orange County, and that's the same for families and for individuals. That's something we're working on, and I see staff have been working super hard on. So that's, not something that is that we think is great, but that is the current situation.
I think those scenarios are going to be good to use in practice though for trainings, because that's kind of how it has presented, like this person and just questions. People are curious, and so I think that is a good thing that we can be able to use for our people.
I really agree. I was so excited to find those. Any other questions, comments? Well, great. Thanks so much.